All right, everybody. Hey, thanks so much for coming out again. Good turnout. We got, honestly, you can see our poets here. We have Justin and Olga with here tonight, and I'm going to introduce Justin's work. Let's get this going right away. There's a talent Justin Lacour possesses in spades. His poems can begin anywhere and end anywhere, yet within seconds of their conclusion, they coalesce in the mind as a perfect singularity. He shares this mastery of scope with a poet like C.A. Conrad, and while both are the creative offspring of Frank O'Hara and Bernadette Mayer, it is the irrepressible St. Everett Maddox who offers secret support to all Louisiana poets who wrestle with daily catastrophe. They are poets of the shadows, or more precisely, of the glow those shadows emit. We can also think of Lacour as a crazed airline pilot, and us, the readers, strapped aboard his poems. He takes us through sudden nosedives, barrel rolls, and vertical climbs out of nowhere. The control stick shakes, cockpit warnings blare, pull up, pull up. This turbulent ride is the voice of intrusive memories pummeling Lacour's consciousness, yet what would crash other people's poems, his intrepid dealing with contradictions, spiritual and social, is artfully mashed into his poetics. Justin knows his first and second gen punk rock maneuvers, turning potential disaster into defiant hymns of resilience. At the heart of Justin Lacour's poetics is a spiritual paradox, a thirst for grace, followed by a revulsion for that thirst's immoderation. This leads to a devotion to the revulsion, a scramble to reclaim the devotion, and ultimately surrender. The result is a startled thanks that grace would arrive in the quirky, particular costumes it chooses. Here one thinks of the magnificent late American Catholic poet Fanny Howe. In her work, the material world is not diminished in any surreptitious way, but neither is it celebrated in order to smuggle in Descartes' cogito through the back door. And like Howe and George Herbert centuries before, Lacour is uninhibited in his use of Christian iconography, candles, altars, any combinatoire of objects that gather symbolic power when named, especially when juxtaposed with the profane, a cigarette, a can of beer. The sacred and the secular blur. Everything acquires a holy edge while teetering on the verge of a precipitous fall. As a dutifully inclined Catholic, Lacour's poetic supply shop is well stocked with concrete instances of intercession. Saints, look for them. You hear them whispering in every poem, but they are less obvious than you think. As Fanny Howe would say, intercession doesn't play just a mediary role, it can also increase one's sense of bedazzlement, which she believed was at the core of her poetic practice. Bedazzlement, to feel the stilling of the soul in order to allow the intellect to truly roam freely. We'll soon hear how Justin Lacour handles intercession in poetics, whether it's through scenes, memories, or projection. In contrast to Presbyterian Benjamin Morris, the other highly skilled and overtly theological poet in New Orleans, who poetically zooms out to let struggling voices have their say through the majestic scenes, like shaking a glass Christmas ornament and watching the snow settle over the figurines. Justin is rather inside that ornament, weathering the blizzard firsthand. There's a picture of Ian Drury in the 1970s wearing only leather pants on a cold concrete stairwell, staring bug-eyed into the camera that reminds me of Justin's poems. And though his poems are mellowing somewhat, we still can sense an impulse to go through, not around, major lapses in faith. Often, this makes for some of the wittiest poetry to be found in Louisiana. In this latest collection, a reading from the Book of Panic, Lavender Ink Books, 2025, the tone is decidedly more introspective. Written in mainly prose poetic packets, Justin is intensifying his relentless quest to synchronize forms of love. He ranges from philia to eros to agape. While ranging in philia, he encounters long-lost friends. Through eros, he ponders lovers old and new. And his reach for agape, or universal love, he withholds, declaring that he's arrived at such a love that he makes us feel the reach. Perhaps the reach is the most important of all. Justin Lacour lives in New Orleans and edits Trampoline, a journal of poetry. He's the author of 6 books of poetry. His first full-length collection, available here today, a reading from the Book of Panic, was recently published by Lavender Ink. Please welcome Justin.
There we go. Thank you all so much for coming. And I'm so thankful for Splice for having me here, and for Bill Lavender and Sean for believing in this book. So I can't think of anything funny at this point in my life, so I'll just go ahead and read some poems. This is called I Am a Pilgrim. In the company of men, I embarrass myself, confusing Steve Spurrier with Steve Spagnuolo. Now an impromptu drum circle, and who can eat the biggest sandwich? I long to be swinging dick of open mic night, but also a voice to help you sleep again. In the library, you sit in mismatched socks, reading a book of difficult poems. I want to belong to you, to tell you it's okay to put your head down. For a little while on Earth, we get to walk 2 by 2. So I never kissed you at the corner of Montrose and Westheimer like I wanted. All the nights of signs and wonders. You drank straight vodka and lost your shoes at a party. You walked back to campus banging on church doors, telling them to let in the poor. You were going to replace the canon with all the lies we told the cops, with cigarette smoke and dragonfly wings. And more beautiful than flowers, your hands around the neck of a flower. Cock-blocked again by my seasonal depression, but also by my swole roommate Eamon. I sit alone at House of Pies, stubbing out cigarettes into a Monte Cristo, and contemplating how my hands might feel on your back. Not clumsy for once, more like the nitrous that Italian girl in the dorms is always doing. I mean, I want to be gentle. So gentle I can touch all the places you hurt without hurting them again. In the book, the last part of the book is a long poem for my wife. It's called Little Motors, Some Love Letters. I'm going to read some of those. You have that joke about Euripides. Euripides pants, you buy these pants. Which brings us back to the Bacchae and questions of interpretation. I try to remain optimistic, even as I'm ripped apart. But you're waiting for an epic where the forest for women is an escape from the oppressive structures of the city. An epic that never seems to come until you write it in dactylic hexameter. Marriage is this animal with 2 heads, 1 body, and we move near the light so we can see. My neck rubs against your neck as you read your epic to me. You get comfortable for your epic, flannel Birkenstocks flopped on a beanbag chair. You strum a 10-string lyre, sing of nightjars and fog, and women bringing flowers for the ghosts of trees. I nod, but I don't understand an epic without a hero, an epic without war. As you play long into the night, what I don't understand grows as big as a blue whale, multiple stomachs, 400-pound heart. What I don't understand opens its swirling eyes. I stare into the bright colors and walk unthinking into its open mouth. This is a poem that does the exact same thing. You take an apple from the fruit bowl, red like your lips, you take a bite. The apple is not a symbol, just an apple, until a snake enters my mind, thick and black, coils around and around my language, crushes the muscle that makes words. Now it's your turn to talk. I have no stories, not a thought in my head, but the one long thought you invent. As you go, you say, in this story, the woman juggles the apple and the snake. Now another apple, now another. Watch me, you say. My hands, my control. In this story, nothing drops from the woman's hands. In this story, the woman names the shadow of everything. You're wearing the black strappy sandals, all summer goth today. It's June and I'm bewitched by you, even your tattoos, the mermaid topless on your arm, her eyes blank moonlight. She breaks me in half. You say reading Island of the Blue Dolphin was really formative. Part of you still wants to live in the wilderness, just you and your dog. Occasionally I'll walk in the woods and think I should bring you back a rock or a piece of green glass. Occasionally we sleep back to back, our vertebrae touching, a kiss of bone. Don't shush me. You shush me, you shush the poem. And I haven't said yet how our first winter together, already I didn't want anyone else. We walked through the snow by the river. Already I wanted to marry you. And when the wind came hard, you let me warm my hands on your sides. These are just jokes, people. Don't take any of this seriously. Okay. So the feminist magician saws a man in half, but she puts him back together differently, I think. Or she doesn't put him back at all, you say. In this marriage, we don't need the same punchline. If we still know longing, if we still talk about what the trees are doing, still sit together in the steam after summer rain, and for her next trick, the magician mesmerizes the man. She makes doves fly out of his mouth. All right. The women are immune to the siren song. It's like a striptease. The women already know how it ends, but the men jump ship en masse to swim towards the song. This is the part of the epic where the women debate Marx, discuss what's left of Freud while the she-wolf gnaws at his bones. This is the part where the women reach out of the epic and throw flaming spears through my ego. I wander blindly through the fog. There are dads with bad beards and tribal tats talking about their paleo diet. When I find you, you say jewelry is not vanity. Women needed it when they couldn't own land. Gold and diamonds were a woman's power. You take off your earrings and lay them on the table between us. Your rings and nose ring. You take off your necklace till I walk where you tell me to walk. Walk to my doom if you say so, though what I think is my doom is actually my renaissance. Mary Weiss from the Shangri-Las died last week in Palm Springs. And in New Orleans, you played Train from Kansas City real loud and read a review of the Women Dressing Women exhibit at the Met and worked and made lunches. The house was a mess and you smelled like patchouli. You told me women with pockets were once thought witches. I thought of all your pockets and how I'm probably misinterpreting Sylvia Plath. Then a Slater-Kenny album so good it made me feel useless by comparison. Like I'm crawling through a garden of carnivorous plants, skeleton trees. I was useless during childbirth. All I remember is my mistakes and you in pain. So I apologize for failure, for history and culture with a capital C. If I read the tale of Aristotle and Phyllis as reflecting medieval anxieties, but also the fluidity of power, I feel a little better about the men who call you ma'am, the men who marvel at your opinions like you were the horse who could do math. I want to find you at the end of every forest, out in every meadow. Then I will scrub the floor to make up for all the times I did not, to make up for patriarchy and capitalism. I will pay for the privilege of cleaning your house. lot of trouble writing this fall, and so I decided I'm gonna keep a diary. I've never done this before, so and I tried to make it into the cadence of poetics or whatever. So I'm just gonna read some selections from an October diary. So these are things from last month. An October diary. My youngest son is watching The Sandlot 2, which is just like The Sandlot 1. Except it's set in the 70s, so there are girls on the team, and the girls say male chauvinist pig a lot to remind you it's the 70s. Then they play Spirit in the Sky. I forgot to mention the blind man in the movie and his dog, which as I write this sounds like a parable. Something about justice and mercy and the preeminence of your neighbor and the economy of salvation. All over our nation, birds are beginning to leave in search of warmth and light. There is a congregation of trees near my house, an empty field, a broken stop sign, a talking blues is in the air, and that's where I get most of my news.
Good.
Good.
The trees, yeah.
Thank you. We're off to a good start. I want a diary that does more than redeem the mundane. It should be a little pugnacious, the words like gravel stuck in a shoe. I was weak and vain today with many sugary thoughts about the lady in the Cymbalta ad. But deep down there's a purity still breathing. What else? My wife completed her fall mantle and taxidermied a parrot. My teenager opined on the need for man coverage over zone coverage. The president spoke of putting troop soldiers in our streets. There's a disturbance brewing in the Atlantic, and as Jim Carroll observed, it's too late to fall in love with Sharon Tate. Today my wanderings took me to Kiln, Mississippi, the birthplace of Brett Favre. An oh so gentle reminder I am nothing like Brett Favre. Or even Doug Flutie. Some say there's a crisis in masculinity, which there is, but not for the reasons they think. Some say the problem is a lack of spaces where men can act like men. I respectfully disagree. My masculinity is more than a fascination with trains and contact sports. I also want to be brave. I want to save someone. It's okay if my masculinity is fragile. My wife's femininity is diamond hard. Together we could form a new type of tree to avoid talking about these things. A tree that can house any number of birds and ghosts. Early in the marriage, my wife said the Wonder Woman costume was a one-time thing, not an every-time thing. All right. With age, I have accepted this. Last night, I hiked up Bourbon Street for the first time in 20 years. I'd like to believe I'm kinder now, or at least need less attention. I'm still learning my job, and my job is to be unafraid. Though the window is slowly closing on the chance to dress my daughter as a ham for Halloween, a la Scout from To Kill a Mockingbird. A minor subplot of the novel is when Jem climbs a tree until Atticus agrees to play football for the Methodists. A minor subplot of my life is I had such a crush on the girl who'd scratch Tylenol off Tylenol and sell it to 8th graders. She deserves a crown of sonnets, but not from me, who must carry his sleepy daughter to bed. I won't carry her much longer. And there are days that run away so fast, you have to scream for them to come back. I swear my wife used to have a t-shirt of Judith beheading Holofernes. Maybe it didn't survive the move. I should probably just go ahead and read the bell jar. When I worked at the methadone clinic, a patient asked me if I could name the 7 feelings, which sounded like a riddle I had to answer to cross a bridge. Think fast. Who is the least evil Harbaugh brother? I say Jim. At what age is a child old enough to understand the concept, you don't start no shit, there won't be no shit? Probably 8. Brad says it's better not to have heroes. But what about Jacques Cousteau? I think I have to give up a lot of stuff to be happy, but I'm going to try. When I was a teacher, an older teacher told me, "You're never doing as well as you think or as bad as you think," which sounded like a fortune cookie. Tonight I sat alone on the patio of Bar Redux, listening to Diana Ross's Touch Me in the Morning, and I felt like crying. It's easy to write a ballad where a rose and a briar grow from the lover's grave. Much harder to sprout kudzu that can cover the whole cemetery in green. Doing good? Doing good. Okay. All right. There's just a little bit more. Come on. I wish the mysterious bump on my forehead was oracular. Maybe it could change colors in times of national calamity. Like if Mount Rushmore just started crying. Brignac came home from college and told us all Caliban was actually a lesbian. This was in 1994. I was still living with my parents, working odd jobs. I thought little of Caliban at the time, though this morning I woke up thinking of Caliban's mother, the witch Sycorax, who once ruled Prospero's Island in some dim matriarchal past outside of the play. Do I have anything original to say? Maybe each text is like the Clue Mansion, containing secret passages to the words we actually need, the words that will save us. Getting near the end of the month. It's Saturday. I could stand by the off-ramp with a big Give Berryman Sonnets a Chance sign. For I love his histrionics, but his mistress gets foobar. Also how he calls cops azure minions of our law. What I mean is I need to try harder. Today is the parish's spaghetti dinner, where after several meetings it was decided we will offer not 3 but 4 meatballs with every order. After my shift, I will come home smelling of garlic and salad dressing to cling to my wife. I never got to be brilliant / live up to my potential, but I would fight for her honor with metal folding chairs. Honor being a murky concept in the time of empire, but has something to do with the integrity of her art, where a mermaid does not become a woman without getting wounded. All right, and this is for Halloween. When Bruce Arians coached the Buccaneers, my oldest son and I referred to him as Daddy Pig. Because he resembled Peppa Pig's father, what with the beard and glasses and ruddy skin. It's less funny when you have to explain it. Now my son is a teenager, and the 7-year-old is trying to explain the legend of Sleepy Hollow, because the teenager has never heard it, which is both wonderful and terrible. My younger son dislikes the open-endedness of the tale. Was a headless horseman real, or just Brom Bones? What really happened to Ichabod Crane in the end? When my younger son makes movies, he says, there will be questions at the end, but also a way to look up the answers. Today our government remains dark and shuttered, and soon I will take my place, leading small ghosts and witches from house to house, knocking on the door of strangers. If I get to be old, someone may ask me to look back on these days, and which side I was on, when the lights went out one by one, and there were no words for fire. I'll read one more poem. Thank you all for being here. This is a little dated. This is my letter to Caitlin Clark, April 3rd, 2024. All right. Congratulations on making the Final Four. I knew you would defeat LSU. Me? I'm just getting over a cold. I've never been to Iowa, and I'm terrible at basketball. Mostly because I'm only 3 apples tall. So I admire your skills. Do you have any advice on writing a long poem? Lately, I've been thinking how Athena really runs the Odyssey by controlling when the characters are awake and when they are asleep. I know that's a real SparkNotes level insight, but let's roll with it. Have you ever seen that Chagall painting, Athena Puts Ulysses to Sleep? The first time I saw it, I was blown away. The color and simplicity. I wish I was like Ulysses, in that I woke up wiser or somewhere different than when I started. But that's the nature of grace. It just comes when it comes. Wikipedia says you were born in 2002. I was very depressed that year. And the year after that. Until I wasn't. Then it was like taking my first steps, like stumbling into the arms of a stranger who far away heard my cries to be well, who traveled 1,000,000 miles so I could finally be well. I don't know you, but I hope you are well. Thank y'all.
Keep it going for Justin Lacour. It is my great honor to introduce our next poet. Rewind. One of my favorite poem titles ever is Vladimir Mayakovsky, A Tragedy. It's by, yeah, you guessed it, Vladimir Mayakovsky. The whirligig bravado it would take a poet today to offer up a poem examining their and their art's place in space-time with a title like this is, I think, in short supply. Now, I'm not saying that Olga Mikolaivna, A Tragedy, question mark, has the same egomaniacal swagger as that admirable Russian futurist, one both Olga and I admire and are indebted to. But there is a shared mosaic sensibility and cerebral introspectacle which ping-pongs across my neural circuits when reading either's work. Olga, who trollops atop that icy surface of postmodernism's global village from center to center, hut to hut, thinker to thinker. In the circle whose centers are everywhere, Olga isn't afraid to get dizzy with it. In reading her words, whether from her as the creative source or in her mediumistic translation work, its fragments compound until they unleash themselves into the page mind as prose blocks, line chunks, ice curdling atop the river of time. From Mayakovsky's Tragedy, have you noticed on the foamy necks of galloping rivers, the bridges have clasped iron fingers in mourning? From Olga's work, heavy, rock steady, the heaviness, the formlessness and the heaviness, and the heavy rock and the form and the heavy heave, heave, heave. Which is to say, when reading either poet, I'm immersed in the environs of language in a way that makes me forget the act of reading, afloat into full experience of the work itself. I read and I'm there. Cities near and far, real and unreal, populate Olga's map of concerns, not as beacons in the mirage style of puritanical city on a hill, but cities in a pit. Y'all know the one. And in her forthcoming book, Our Monuments to Southern California, she calls them, it's a tripping the fight fantastic outward into a pseudo-ekphrastic lyric essay. One of my favorite genres of writing, by the way, the pseudo-ekphrastic lyric essay, that spills across the highways that hastily suture those cities together, yet obviously keep us apart. a full-on plopping down onto the pedal into the problematic, perhaps bullshit rhetoric of freeways, the same title of American photographer Catherine Opie's sequence of unpopulated, empty highways from 1990 SoCal that spurs, if not spurns, the concrete veins of our transportation systems. The poet Mayakovsky, the optimistic motor mouth. Opie, the hypotext of Olga's forthcoming book, serves as a gauzy mystic of optics with her, quote, preconception of what history looks like, as Olga frames it. An Opie quote about the pyramids. The freeways are the architecture that will be left behind like the pyramids in Egypt. More often than not, the architecture of brutalism is thought of in terms of its vertical, the deeply angular shadow it throws. But highways are overlooked as brutalist structures, given their sublunary status, low to the earth, hugging the ditches, ever horizontal. We take them not just for granted, but by decree, especially here in the Gulf South. So many livelihoods in so many ways, tethered to oil, the way it spills into everyday life. While meditating on Opie's photographs, I coincidentally read a Brecht poem, Song of the Machines, and realized the highways are a kind of sheet music for this song. Ambivalent, this isn't a song to the lonely star, it is the wild din of our daily labor. We curse it and we hold it dear. This wild din is the voice of our cities, and it pleases us to sing this song, for this is the language we all understand, and soon it will be the world's mother tongue. And here, to tie it in knots, is Olga Mikolaivna.
Thank you. Can someone help me? Oh wait, no, I helped myself. Thank you so much for that introduction. Also, are those printed on your children's coloring books?
What?
The introduction? Did you print it?
Adorable Easter egg.
It was there's an adorable Easter egg.
There's, if you're looking really closely, there's some Easter eggs in there.
That's so wonderful, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. This is one of my favorite cities, with some of my favorite people. I feel like New Orleans has become like a really special place for me. I live in Philly, and I think Philadelphia is kind of like New Orleans. They're both, well, yeah. Anyways, I'm not here to talk about cities, but maybe I am, since that's all I write about. But, okay, so today I have two projects that I will be reading from. The first project is just these sonnets that I've been writing. And I've given myself a constraint of a year, and the sonnets are Lynn-Hygenian sonnets, so they're not making an argument, and the volta is not your traditional turn, but it's rather a return to the previous sonnet, or the sonnet itself. And I'm almost done. My constraint will be done on December 29th. Yay! And then I will read from our monuments to Southern California, she calls them. So, thank you. Maybe it's too late to walk home tonight, your tall frame against branches and ink sky, river to the side, brandishing. I'm a faster pisser anyways. Calm in the frame, too much death in the surround. I do not kill the ants, leave the flies alone until water shapes a reflective constitution into softness. Edges trembling, merging, coalescing, unlike mirrors, sharply defining separation. Based on the light, we both guessed it was 7:30 in the morning, filtering through your window, slated, blank line, language scatter, freshness, rosy. In the gentle morning sun, I gently sit. The shadow crops, to my back a morning fight, familiar, dismaying, true. From somewhere beyond, merengue hums, frequenting off walls and casing, nodding off on the train, a man drops his phone, I drop my bookmark. A person with their luggage, too, drops their phone. We echo one another, reverberate what's present at the moment in the wailing space. How to describe this feeling, that reappearance of desire? An inclination towards the abrasion as an opening. The height has passed. Dog days are afoot. A trite comparison. I'm a different person than a year ago. Light edges towards the perimeter. Oh, thank you. You don't have to eat. We can wait. Before I fully sat in time, is this a possibility? I do not wish to close and cloister up a sentence in a time's acidic, fatuous, and fabled movement, the jolting mutter of its days and space. I need to let time pass. How much continuity extends? How much does it disappear? How does shine my face? I fear my past tense has somehow affected what the future may desire. Tense of deriving from the Latin tempus time, the dew, an extension of the midnight absolution, to be bored into by the moment, time itself, a static, sticky vow, a piercing by light's exhaustion, the past. The fool is the poet card, writes Ariana Rhymes, where I will go. The nasturtiums in the vase faded from crimson to aubergine, cohering moribund practicality. We talk about our respective hungers, and the truth is, neither one of us seems to be that hungry. Maybe there's something to be figured out still. What it means to have an art practice, set up a show, write a book, a conversation, a personal continuance. My clothes don't fit right now. The summer's seasonal abstraction of sustaining myself. This too will change. The fluctuation of my mind and interior, and the chatter goes on, and I will put on my teaching fit and make pretend. And everyone will be waiting on me, and everything shatters. Crying in the Cy Twombly room. Have you cried in the Cy Crying in the Cy Twombly room, the point is null, the nullest of sessions. I give into headlong stances. I give into the point of defying a feeling, the defiance of feeling, the headstrong. I caught a cold. I took a hold of myself. Hermit summers come to an end, overdone. The slowing down again, the coffee cup again, my absolution again, the nasturtiums blowing up again. Red. I feel stupid writing something unporous as freedom is in the leaving of things. Words, refusal to mind in the sun, smashing me, asking me for redirection. So this is what it's like. I want to leave space for opposition, sitting in cigarette clouds. The finite begins stretching into an oblivion. Matter's lacuna. How many choices will I make today? I want to leave. Mauve. Folding towels together at the blue hole. The moment. There must be a rift, a plunge one must make. How I pick my nails. You must change your life, writes Rilke. I look at myself, observing the shifting in my face and features. Smokers in Ridgewood, a shadow in my ear, eyes asunder, mounting vision eclipsed. I see, I look, I undo. Language, a relationship. A language is a relationship, incorporating oneself in its stitching. The sudden, seamless comfort that encompasses the couple. When does familiarity start to bind, ruptures density, that feared, uncomfortable place? And so a language, you must take a risk. I should have washed that slip, but I just don't like to partake in the erasure. Light ossification and errantry, dawn breaking, ombre drifts, That which passes sounds off, distance, gathered in the dust of days. When morning comes, I'm okay again, and I wish for something else, something exterior, that which doesn't arrive, keeping me waiting, keeping me here with the windows open, an invitation to invoke the dead. Another month. How false a temerity may be. Half a year's sounds in a bedroom, singe that shadow, the echo of the window on the wall in red. Time pauses its dimension, aria, paucity. 2 months extended into squawking years, a wailed plaything, a purpose of a dahlia. The teens in cold water make out while a fire rages. Their friends smoke grass. The fire continues, a background to that night. It's very Tarkovskian. The teenagers kiss. I replenish my adulthood, hoping that someday again. If not, I wish I would have known. Maybe that's half of the break, not knowing. Unknowingness lingering openly, open-ended. Maine texted me today, told me a dream she had with me in it. Her, me, M, a reading, and said how prescient. She said she's in Delco, been there a week, weird dreams, brief, the opening. At yoga, after enough physical output, I cried. The theme is crying, you guys. The release of some tension, the truth of my body state, that honest remark to myself surrounded by young white people holding hands to heart, bowing namaste. I told Maida my head and heart, their aches. She said, what a year we've had. Head, heart, hands, corporeal entities that make us, engendering the creative divine output, what we need to feel, be, make art, when afflicted, how to function, the crisis that ensues, the field and the sky are white, hoary, scantily covered by powdered snow, the field is a dream of the real remembered into a production. There's no point to the movie, not some grand moral, says Olivier Assayas. Only that there is an opening and an unknown. A movie, a vessel that carries what's remembered or attempted at remembering, the tone, atmospheric flares. Okay, so is anyone familiar with Catherine Opie? The poet, she's not a poet, a photographer, the photographer. So she mostly does portraits, and to my mind, she should have stuck to portraits. And so when she moved to Los Angeles, she took these like photographs of freeways early in the morning when she was like commuting. And these freeway photographs are quite beautiful, but I find there's something disturbing about the way that she describes them and talks about them. And so this is basically the book. It's me thinking about her conception of freeways and then my own conception of freeways and what photography and history does to an idea, or even to like the subjectivity of a thing. Okay. A year-long process, somnolent in the between, somnolent in the wide, arching, not so arching, 2x6-inch photographs, layers of freeway curving into one another above the streamlined meeting points, palm trees in the background, billboards in search of eyes, stone, monolithic columns upholding a very specific life, a value system of individuality, crossing into isolated states. Catherine Opie says, the freeways separate communities, but I would say that the biggest thing they do is separate the city from the suburb. Driving from O'Hare to Fishers, Indiana, we arrived, despite the collisionless heave. My mother recalls how dark it was. Freeways from Illinois to Indianapolis were not lit, or perhaps still not. When driving from Milwaukee back to Chicago, December's edge, I recall the field moon-shadowed in the freeze, not else, the highway unlit, road we hardly saw through headlights, Seth drunk and passed out in the back, Jersey driving, myself a passenger, a layer of cold, a layer of dark. Which route did we take that day? Which route did my stepfather take that day? Me passed out in the back, a child post-flight, stepfather driving, mom a passenger, our arrival into the depth of December. Day fell at 4, the cul-de-sac and French doors, and no, there wasn't a fence, and no, there wasn't a dog, and no, this wasn't a single family just yet, a fusion rather, a fusion of two pasts, a double family home in the middle of a cul-de-sac in the suburbs of Indianapolis, a prairie marked by highways surrounding. So much room to breathe, so many possibilities for escape, yet none. A structure, a monument to emptiness, its function is to transport a milieu of vehicles, rigs, and motorhomes from point A to B. It means skipping the city from above, behind, and aside, cutting through, a knowing of the interiority and sheepishness of place. The freeways in Opie's work are stranded. They are lines jutting through sky into a direction obviously an ending, obviously seamless, curving into horizon, reminiscent of amusement parks, encased in brutalism. Welcome to Aberdeen, signs a billboard. Washington 12, heading to the ocean, whip one another with bull help, whip the sand, so far north, so far northwest, only ocean, a heavy populated sky. Davy turned on, smells like Teen Spirit as we crossed the invisible border. Andy driving, Davy a passenger, Ashley and I in the back smoking cigarettes. Davy laughs, he has asthma, carries an inhaler, carries a blue spirit pack, salt air hits my nostrils, sweat and tobacco. A memorial to Kurt Cobain under a bridge transmits anti-drug sentiments. Graffiti on the bottom of the bridge transmits defiance. A stone guitar sits stupidly in a pedestal, also written upon, marked. Downtown, a protest of 5 stands in front of the Needle Exchange building. A duplex on Paris Street in Olympia is advertised as Kurt Cobain's house on Airbnb. Oh my God. Catherine Opie's Freeway series was conceived in 1994 when she began photographing the quotidian structures in the early morning using a panoramic camera. The resulting work is a collection of stranded lines devoid of context, jutting through the sky, curving into horizon, obviously infinite, obviously seamless. The freeway is a product of modernity as much as the Brooklyn Bridge, which the poet Vladimir Mayakovsky wrote so passionately about during his journey to the United States in 1925. He lauded the bridge for its steel frame, its miles of cables conjoining austere bolts, shaping windows out into New York City. For him, the bridge held a religious aura. He called it a museum Madonna. He wrote of men ranting on radio, their hungry howl, how they leapt headlong into the Hudson, a humankind's conduit, its steel a connective plane, as he, too, a visitor from the Soviet Union, stood composing verse, syllabic by syllable. For Mayakovsky, modernity was a promise of a unified future where men met, lived out their lives. Modernity, a bridge itself, perhaps. For Mayakovsky, the bridge is both a monument and a site of germination, a flourishing. From the bridge, a geologist of the centuries will succeed in recreating our contemporary world. People, vitality at the core of his fascination. In contrast, Opie's freeways are solitary, photographed before traffic crowds the pavement. Many of her images are desolate, roads winding, cursing, cruising through the desert. Brush grows, peaks, wanes into overexposure. Straight lines gash the monochromatic sky, which does not brighten the page. It is the abyss within which a monument excels. At an underpass, columns stand erect as enduring stories, only collapsible by seismic waves beneath their concrete forms. The freeways are the architecture that will be left behind like the pyramids in Egypt. Part of my interest in photography is the way the camera can be used as a tool in relating to creating history, Opie has remarked. A preoccupation of what history looks like, where it dots the future pages. Why must the freeways be preserved in the style of the Egyptian pyramids and the Sphinx? Photographed somewhere between the years 1849 to 1851 for the first time by Maxime Ducamp, they were captured as oddities, excavated, rinsed of meaning, lifeless, lonely photographs outside of context, fragmented. A photograph is not only a reproduction of the material, it is a collision of past and present, a framing of knowledge carried over through time, interacting with the viewer's contemporary perception, while empirically attending to experience through the utility of mechanical reproduction. Art as both instantaneous and as a record, it is an attempt at truth. As a photographer, Opie must be aware of the reproductive nature of her discipline, the interiority of image making. History is, indeed, created by narrative, form, and image, a perpetuous conjecture. Otherwise, history just happens. History with the capital H distinction is people's daily lives through a lens of grandiose gestures concomitant with and in resistance to the state's desire to control and sculpt language, whittle away at indigestible pasts, the fashions unfit for a cultural agenda. Often, the history with a capital H one is privy to is enacted in a monument, a national persuasion becoming fact. At times, it is resistance abdicated to, assimilated it into stone. Roberto Bolaño writes of the Neo-Chileans on tour from southern Chile to the north, going north, 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 the journey the journey northward. And he writes, the border of Ecuador, and at the time Pancho was 28 or 29 years old, and soon he would die, and Margarita was 17, and none of the Neo-Chileans was over 22, and a van passing through small towns of a thin interpretation of Chile up to Peru, and they play in clubs and bars, and sometimes there's nobody to watch them, and the thing is, it's okay. It's not about the audience nor the fame, it's about the road, and I do not mean to be facetious nor flippant here. I know of the tone. It's about the road takes. The Neo-Chileans depart in November, and January cross over to Ecuador, a small country, landmass in comparison to Peru, in comparison to Chile. But here is the thing. I'm not sure that Bolaño was a proponent of borders. I believe he, like Glissant, was well aware of the change in environment, crossing from one place into the next, microclimate, upsetting cultural values, trigonometry, and the Neo-Chileans, after all, decide to drive. Their youth is spent in a van, deranged, wandering, swaddling Pancho and his fevered delirium into blankets, stopping in at bars, releasing any notions of settlement, on the move, the ultimate American story. Bolaño called himself Latin American regarding all of the Americas, the large quantities of land which have been carved out, cut through by an invasiveness of borders on a page. Imagine pencil, a pen, a scientist, or even worse, some sort of city planner, geographer perhaps, lays down the perimeter of place. There's no need to imagine, it's all here. So perhaps in making light judgment and lighter statements here, perhaps highways, after all, are American, spanning all of the Americas. Remember Che? And here the name America derives from the colonial and the name of Amerigo, and Americas are Americas, and the Americas are the highways, splitting apart, splintering, dividing lands into smaller frames, cutting through the disguise of whatever civility ensconces. And civility too is post-colonial, all of which is a symptom of the type of ridicule some have chosen to invade, imbibe. And here I am making grand statements, drafted statements, which will in turn work themselves out into a more studious and studied approach. Because after all, I am imprecise and I am embracing imprecision, and in some regard, this is anti-highway. Imagine a highway imprecise. And the Neo-Chileans drive, and they sleep in the aforementioned vans and motels, and this poem is written in Blanes, Spain in 1993, and the Neo-Chileans were driving in the 70s, and perhaps in the time he was traveling, Bologna was in his teens, and perhaps in the time Bologna was traveling, he was escaping Chile under Pinochet, and copper mining was privatized due to the Chicago Boys' neoliberal policy, and perhaps if we are to look at Bologna's life history, he was imprisoned as a teen under Pinochet, and yes, he was in teen, and perhaps highways are markers of freedom, but they're also insults, symptoms of the dead. What is a highway without oil? Why even dictate a highway if there isn't product to move, caravan along the road? And copper is needed for transportation, and perhaps highways are grave lacerations in the land and the physical, and perhaps highways are also the seams in a lacerated and divided space, a consumed space, in a space dispersed. I'm not done. And perhaps my problem with highways is how easily it is to forge these political stitches, toppling with Bougainvillea, all of the year, Crocai and spring, the California highway surrounded by poppies, and I-5 stretching from Tijuana to British Columbia, along the northwestern part in summer months, Scotch broom yellows the side, the ditches, and Scotch broom is horribly invasive, its roots impossible to destroy once they have taken hold. Hold, to hold, from Old English haldon, to contain, to grasp, to retain. Hold, consumed. In one photograph, two curves atop the frame diverge at a potential meeting point. The pathways never cross, a bifurcation rendered against an overexposed sky. In this particular black and white distinction, the photograph seems to capture grief, wonder even. Light hits the concrete sides, washing out a stature. How can these be so geometric, architectural, yet almost organic? The curvature, the crevice, the details of weathering. These shapes, these freeways, almost accretive productions growing as the viewfinder draws closer towards me, round and round and round, a type of sickening carousel. Thank you.
Keep it going for Olga and Justin.
Yeah, abracadabra. Thank y'all for coming out tonight. Can we get another round of applause? Another. We were, Olga and Rodrigo and I were talking about the audience yesterday at Bud Rips. We're having some rhetorical festivities, just talking about things. But I went to a couple of music shows last night and, had the epiphany that the audience is not a rhetorical activity. It is a physical thing. And y'all are the audience right here. This is who we write for. This is who we believe with. This is the praxis of poetry that we perform every week, every day, every month of our lives, every year. And I thank y'all for being here and being part of that praxis. Can't go enough without thanking. Rodrigo Toscano has volunteered to buy each of you a drink after the show. Just kidding. But if you want to spend some money, Tilted House has printed these incredible books of Olga's. They're over here for sale. Lavender Ink has pressed these incredible books of Justin's. And I'll tell you what, Justin has already bought these from the press, so the money goes straight to him. Give that man some money for his poetry.
Hell yeah.
Give Cameron some money, and give Olga some money. Well, you know, you got royalties. You got some royalties around here. Everybody gets the money. The poets get the money, the presses get the money.
And the bartender.
And the bartenders, tip your bartenders. Get free, you get wild. Talk to the poets, hang out. Get some more praxis on. And we will see you December for the last splice of the last December. But there's 4 more after that. Love y'all. Get some drinks. Let's get free. Let's have fun.